I pay respect to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Today is the 26th of July. We continue with the Nidana Samyutta, 12th chapter of Samyutta Nikaya. We are now at 12.37. At Savatthi, the Buddha said, "Monks, this body is not yours, nor does it belong to others. It is all karma, to be seen as generated and fashioned by volition, as something to be felt. Therein, monks, the instructed noble disciple attends carefully and closely to dependent origination itself thus. When this exists, that comes to be. With the arising of this, that arises. When this does not exist, that does not come to be. With the cessation of this, that ceases. That is, with ignorance as condition, volition comes to be. With volition as condition, consciousness, etc., such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. But with the remainderless fading away and cessation of ignorance, comes cessation of volition. With the cessation of volition, cessation of consciousness, etc., such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering." That's the end of the sutta. So the Buddha said, this body is not yours, nor does it belong to others. This one, in this chapter on dependent origination, it does not explain so much why this body is not yours. But later, in the Khandha Samyutta, when the Buddha talks about the 5 aggregates, then it is explained that we have no control over our body. That's why it's not ours. And here it says it is all karma, to be seen as generated and fashioned by volition, as something to be felt. The translation in the Pali Text Society book is, it should be regarded as brought about by past karma, by plans, by volitions, by feelings. So this body is, here it says, is a result of old karma, and not only that, it's also generated and fashioned by volition. Volition, take it to be like the will to live. Here in the Pali Text Society, it's plans also, and even by feelings, according to the PTS. The instructed noble disciple considers dependent origination. This formula here, when this exists, that comes to be. With the arising of this, that arises. When this does not exist, that does not come to be. With the cessation of this, that ceases. So you see this formula, it says when something exists, something else comes to exist. When something arises, something else arises. So one thing is a condition, something else. When this does not exist, that does not come to be. The cessation of this, that ceases. So for example, when ignorance exists, then volition, the will to live, comes to be. With the arising of ignorance, there is the arising of volition. And then similarly, when ignorance does not exist, then volition does not come to be. With the cessation of ignorance, volition also ceases. It is not that when something exists, something disappears. It's not, When something exists, something else comes to be. It's not then, so you have to remember this. 12.38 at Savatthi, Buddha said, monks, what one intends and what one plans and whatever one has a tendency towards, this becomes a basis for the maintenance of consciousness. When there is a basis for us, when there is a basis, there is a support for the establishing of consciousness. When consciousness is established and has come to growth, there is the production of future renewed existence. When there is the production of future renewed existence, future birth, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair come to be. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. If monks, one does not intend and one does not plan, but one still has a tendency towards something, this becomes a basis for the maintenance of consciousness. When there is a basis, there is a support for the establishing of consciousness. When consciousness is established and has come to growth, there is the production of future renewed existence. So, such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. But monks, when one does not intend, and one does not plan, and one does not have a tendency towards anything, no basis exists for the maintenance of consciousness. When there is no basis, there is no support for the establishing of consciousness. When consciousness is unestablished and does not come to growth, there is no production of future renewed existence. When there is no production of future renewed existence, future birth, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair cease. Such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. So here the Buddha says there are three things that are nutriments for the maintenance of consciousness. Firstly, what we intend. The Pali word is ceteti, from the word cetana. And what one plans, pakapeti, and whatever one has a tendency towards, anuseti, from the word anusaya, tendency. These three things supports consciousness. What one intends, what one plans, and what one has a tendency towards. So there are these three things. Then there is a support for the establishing of consciousness, and then consciousness comes to grow. But the second part, if one does not intend and one does not plan, but one still has a tendency towards something, this also becomes a basis for the maintenance of consciousness. Even if you don't have plan, you don't have intention, but you still have a tendency towards something, meaning you still have a craving for something. Then consciousness still continues, is maintained. So these three things, what you intend, what you plan, this could be like sometimes when a person is dying, he still has unfulfilled ambitions, still want to do this, still wants to do that. This is very common. Even in the suttas it is stated that even devas, having lifespan of millions of years, after such a long lifespan now, when they are about to die, and then they panic, and then they think, they still haven't done this, they still haven't done that. So this is the first part, what you intend and what you plan. But however, if at the moment of dying you don't have all this planning and intention, yet if you still have a tendency towards something, that means you still haven't let go of craving. Then this consciousness is still maintained. You can see from here, it's not easy to become liberated from this flow of consciousness. And this flow of consciousness creates samsara, creates the world. So that's why one has to be totally cool, totally, like earlier we read, you have to be disenchanted with the world. Then you got to have revulsion for the world. Then you got to have viraga, dispassion towards the world, totally tired of the world. And then only you can become liberated. So for most people, you have not come to that stage for most people. The first stage is to attain stream entry. If you attain stream entry, then you have entered the path of the holy ones, the Aryans. And then you have a maximum of 7 more lifetimes. And as you go through these 7 more lifetimes, you become more and more disenchanted with the world. And then you slowly become more and more dispassionate towards the world, and one day you will enter Nibbana. 12.41 at Savatthi. Then the householder, Anathapindika, approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him and sat down to one side. The Blessed One then said to him, Householder, when 5 fearful animosities have subsided in a noble disciple, and he possesses the 4 factors of stream entry, and he has clearly seen and thoroughly penetrated with wisdom the noble method, if he wishes, he could by himself declare of himself, I am one finished with hell, finished with the animal realm, finished with the domain of ghosts, finished with the plane of misery, the bad destinations, the nether world. I am a stream enterer, no longer bound to the nether world, fixed in destiny, with enlightenment as my destination. I'll stop here for a moment. So the Buddha says, if a person has these 3 factors, he possesses these 3 factors, he should have the confidence to believe that he is a stream enterer. The first stage, Arya, first path Arya. And once you have become Arya, then the hell realm is closed for you, the animal realm and the ghost realm. You will never be born into these 3 woeful planes again. You notice here, these 3 realms are the 3 woeful planes of rebirth. Later books, they added one more. They added the Asura. And this Asura is found in the later Mahayana books. Generally in the Mahayana books, and also in the Abhidhamma. So it shows that the Abhidhamma and the Mahayana books were written much later. So here in the earliest suttas, they always talk about 3 realms of these woeful planes. So what are these 3 factors? I'll go into it. What are the 5 fearful animosities that have subsided? Householder, one who destroys life, engenders on account of such behavior fearful animosity pertaining to the present life, and fearful animosity pertaining to the future life, and he experiences mental pain and displeasure. Thus for one who abstains from destroying life, this fearful animosity has subsided. One who takes what is not given, one who engages in sexual misconduct, one who speaks falsely, one who indulges in wine, liquor and intoxicants that are a basis for negligence, engenders on account of such behavior fearful animosity pertaining to the present life and fearful animosity pertaining to the future life, and he experiences mental pain and displeasure. Thus, for one who abstains from wine, liquor and intoxicants that are a basis for negligence, this fearful animosity has subsided. These are the 5 fearful animosities that have subsided. So here I start about to explain. These 5 fearful animosities refer to the 5 precepts that Panchasila that we are advised to uphold. Fearful animosity means that if you break the 5 precepts, you give fear to others because you kill, you steal, you commit sexual misconduct, you lie or cheat, and you take intoxicants. So you give fear to others, and also animosity. Animosity meaning hatred. They fear you as well as hate you. For example, if you kill, and then these beings know that you can kill them, they fear you, but at the same time they have a lot of hatred for you. So if there's a chance, they will take revenge on you. So because of that, you will have to suffer mental pain and displeasure either in this life or future life as a result of your killing karma. Similarly, for the breaking the other precepts, second, stealing, third, sexual misconduct, number 4, speaking falsely, and number 5, indulging in liquor. Now, why indulging in liquor can give you this fearful animosity? Because when you indulge in liquor, you lose control of yourself. What you should not say, you say. What you should not do, you do. So because of that, you can also easily break the other precepts. So you also engender this fearful animosity. So this is the first condition. If you want to be a stream enterer, you got to keep the precepts. And what are the 4 factors of stream entry that he possesses? Here, householder, the noble disciple possesses confirmed confidence in the Buddha thus. The Blessed One is an Arahant, perfectly enlightened, accomplished in true knowledge and conduct, fortunate, knower of the world, unsurpassed leader of persons to be tamed, teacher of devas and humans, the enlightened one, the Blessed One. He possesses confirmed confidence in the Dhamma thus. The Dhamma is well expounded by the Blessed One, directly visible, immediate, inviting one to come and see, applicable, to be personally experienced by the wise. He possesses confirmed confidence in the Sangha thus. The Sangha of the Blessed One's disciples is practicing the good way, practicing the straight way, practicing the true way, practicing the proper way, that is, the 4 pairs of persons, the 8 types of individuals. This Sangha of the Blessed One's disciples is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of reverential salutation, the unsurpassed field of merit for the world. He possesses the virtues dear to the noble ones, unbroken, untorn, unblemished, unmottled, freeing, praised by the wise, ungrasped, leading to concentration. These are the 4 factors of stream entry that he possesses. So these are the characteristics of stream entry. He has unshakable faith in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, 3 things. And then the 4th is, he has the Aryan Sila. Aryan Sila, sometimes it is called perfect Sila, perfect moral conduct. Actually comprises 3 factors in the Noble Eightfold Path. In the Noble Eightfold Path, the 8 factors can also be described as 3 things. Sila, Samadhi, Panya. Moral conduct, concentration and wisdom. So the Sila part consists of 3 factors. Right speech, right action and right livelihood. Right speech consists of 4 precepts. Not to lie, not to engage in malicious speech, speech motivated by anger. Number 3, not to speak coarse, vulgar words. And number 4, not to engage in idle gossip. So right speech has 4 precepts. And then right action has 3 precepts. Not to kill, not to take what is not given, and not to engage in sexual misconduct. And then right livelihood is earning your livelihood in a way that does not harm others. And that means you uphold the first two factors, right speech and right action. So right livelihood in a way is covered by right speech and right action. So actually there are only 7 precepts in the Aryan Sila, comprising right speech and right action. And you can say right livelihood also, 7 precepts. And what is the noble method that he has clearly seen and thoroughly penetrated with wisdom? Here, householder, the noble disciple attends closely and carefully to dependent origination itself thus. When this exists, that comes to be. With the arising of this, that arises. When this does not exist, that does not come to be. With the cessation of this, that ceases. That is, with ignorance as condition, volition comes to be. With volition as condition, consciousness comes to be. With consciousness as condition, mentality, materiality, etc., etc. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. But with the remainderless fading away and cessation of ignorance comes cessation of volition. With the cessation of volition, cessation of consciousness, etc., etc. Such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. This is the noble method that he has clearly seen and thoroughly penetrated with wisdom. When householder, these 5 fearful animosities have subsided in a noble disciple, and he possesses these 4 factors of stream entry, and he has clearly seen and thoroughly penetrated with wisdom the noble method. If he wishes, he could by himself declare of himself, I am one finished with hell, finished with the animal realm, finished with the domain of ghosts, finished with the plane of misery, the bad destinations, the nether world. I am a stream enterer, no longer bound to the nether world, fixed in destiny, with enlightenment as my destination. That's the end of the sutta. So here, you see, if we want to become a stream enterer, an Arya, so that we are no more going to be reborn in the woeful planes of existence. And 3 things here are important. 1, you have to keep the 5 precepts, or as I mentioned just now, the 7 precepts. And then the second is you have the 4 factors of stream entry. That means you have unshakable faith in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, and you have the Aryan Sila. And the third one is you know this noble method, the Aryan method, that means dependent origination. You can see that suffering is dependently origination, is dependently originated. 12.43 at Savatthi. Monks, I will teach you the origin and the passing away of suffering. Listen to that and attend closely. I will speak. Yes, noble sir, the monks replied. The Blessed One said, at what, monks, is the origin of suffering? In dependence on the I in forms, I consciousness arises. The meeting of the tree is contact. With contact as condition, feeling comes to be. With feeling as condition, craving. This is the origin of suffering. Independence on ear and sounds, independence on nose and odors, independence on tongue and taste, independence on the body and tactile objects. Similarly, this consciousness arises, and then the meeting of the three, namely the sense organ, the sense object, and the sense consciousness, is contact, and with contact as condition, feeling arises. With feeling as condition, craving. This is the origin of suffering. Stop here for a moment. So here you see, for this, any one of the 6 consciousness to arise, there has to be this condition that the sense organ must be there. For example, for your eye consciousness to arise, you must have a good eye. And then there is form for the in front of the eye. So with these 2 as condition, eye consciousness arises. But if we think carefully, this is not the only 2 conditions, because there has got to be other conditions like volition. Volition, the will to live, then consciousness can prolong, because independent origination, consciousness arises dependent on sankhara, dependent on volition, right? This is another 2 conditions. For eye consciousness to arise, you've got to have eye in forms. So once you have eye in forms, say like something comes before your eye, the eye consciousness arises. And then the meeting of the tree, that means the contact of the tree will start the mind working. Feeling arises. Feeling is the first thing. And then after feeling, you have perception. After feeling, you have perception. Then after that, you may have thinking. Then after that, you may have intention, intending to do something. Maybe you see something attractive, then you have this perception, and then you intend to obtain it or something. So this starts the mind working. So, but once you have feeling, then if it's a pleasant feeling, then craving arises. Once you have craving, then this dependent origination goes. Craving leads to clinging or attachment, which leads to being, which leads to birth and suffering. So that's the origin of suffering. And what mounts is the passing away of suffering. Independence on the I and forms. I consciousness arises. The meeting of the tree is contact. With contact as condition, feeling comes to be. With feeling as condition, craving. But with the remainderless fading away and cessation of that same craving comes cessation of clinging. With the cessation of clinging, cessation of existence or being. With the cessation of being, cessation of birth. With the cessation of birth, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair cease. Such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. This is the passing away of suffering. Similarly, independence on the ear and sounds and on the mind and mental objects, this consciousness arises, and the meeting of the tree is contact, and with contact as condition, feeling comes to be. With feeling as condition, craving. But with the remainderless fading away and cessation of that same craving comes cessation of clinging, and then leads to cessation of being, cessation of birth, etc. Such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. So here, this sequence, you can consider it, that means if you have the 6 sense bases, and then the 6 sense objects comes before your 6 sense bases, then the consciousness arises, and then there is contact, and then feeling comes about. So this you can consider as this present life, this present life. And then if you crave because of feeling, you have craving, and that leads to attachment and being and birth. So birth refers to the next life, birth and aging and dying and all that. So here you're talking about 2 lifetimes, present lifetime and the future lifetime. So it says, if you want to stop that suffering, this you have to, with the remainderless fading away and cessation of that same craving comes cessation of clinging. So you have to stop the chain that leads to suffering at craving. If you stop your craving for all the things in the world, which also means you have to let go. You have to let go of your attachments, your clinging, and then slowly that leads to the cessation of being, and then that will lead to the cessation of birth or rebirth. It's important to note that this has to come about with the cessation of craving. But for you to cut craving, you have to know enough Dhamma, have to practice enough Dhamma so that you reduce your ignorance. With strong ignorance, you cannot stop this suffering. I come to the next sutta, 12.51. 12.51. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. There the Blessed One addressed the monks thus, "Monks, noble sir," those monks replied. The Blessed One said this, "Monks, when a monk is making a thorough investigation, in what way should he thoroughly investigate for the utterly complete destruction of suffering? Noble sir, our teachings are rooted in the Blessed One, guided by the Blessed One, take recourse in the Blessed One. It would be good if the Blessed One would clear up the meaning of this statement. Having heard it from him, the monks will remember it. Then listen and attend closely, monks, I will speak." "Yes, noble sir," the monks replied. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha is asking the monks, how should a monk thoroughly investigate so that he can destroy suffering? So they asked the Buddha to explain. So the Buddha said, "Here, monks, when he makes a thorough investigation, a monk thoroughly investigates thus the many diverse kinds of suffering that arise in the world, headed by aging and death. What is the source of this suffering? What is its origin? From what is it born and produced? When what exists, does aging and death come to be? When what does not exist, does aging and death not come to be?" As he thoroughly investigates, or he thoroughly contemplates, he understands thus the many diverse kinds of suffering that arise in the world, headed by aging and death. This suffering has birth as its source, birth as its origin. It is born and produced from birth. When there is birth, aging and death comes to be. When there is no birth, aging and death does not come to be. He understands aging and death, its origin, its cessation, and the way leading on that is in conformity with its cessation. He practices that way and conducts himself accordingly. This is called a monk who is practicing for the utterly complete destruction of suffering, for the cessation of aging and death. I'll stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says, if a monk wants to destroy suffering, he should contemplate thoroughly. He contemplates what is the source of suffering. And then he understands that this world is suffering because of impermanence. The strongest characteristic of the world is impermanence. Everything in the world is impermanent. There's not a single thing in the world, in the universe, that is permanent. So that is why we talk about anatta. Anatta, sometimes people translate as no soul. That's a wrong translation. It's not no soul. It means there is nothing that is permanent, that does not change according to conditions. If there is something that does not change, then you can say, that is me, right? But if everything changes, then whatever you take yourself to be, in a while you will die. You will die off, and then it change to something else. So because of that, this concept of no self or not self, the Buddha spoke. It's not that there is no soul, it's just that there is no thing that is unchanging. There is no essence, core in us that is unchanging. Everything inside us is changing. So we are just a flux of conditions. Because of this impermanent nature of the world, there is suffering. Because whatever we experience that gives us pleasure, gives us happiness, we want to cling to it. We don't want it to change. But it is impossible. Anything that we are happy with, it must change. Even our happiness itself is not permanent. So because of that, when the happiness goes away, then suffering takes its place. So this world is a world of happiness plus suffering. So because of that, we generally say it is a world of suffering. And you cannot change the nature of the world. The only thing is, once you exist in the world, you must experience this characteristic of the world, which is impermanence, leading to suffering. So if you don't want to have suffering, then you should not be born into the world. The moment you are born into the world, this is the world of suffering. So he understands that the origin of suffering is birth. If there's no birth, there's no suffering. It's because there is birth, there is suffering. So once he understands that, then he practices for the complete destruction of suffering. How does he practice? That means he practices according to the Dhamma, so that he is not born again. Then the Buddha continues. Then, investigating further, he thoroughly investigates thus. What is the source of this birth? What is its origin? From what is it born and produced? What is the source of this being, this clinging, this craving? These 12 links, he considers what is the source. As he thoroughly investigates, he understands thus. Volition has ignorance as its source, ignorance as its origin. It is born and produced from ignorance. When there is ignorance, volition comes to be. When there is no ignorance, volition does not come to be. He understands volition, its origin, its cessation, and the way leading on that is in conformity with its cessation. He practices that way and conducts himself accordingly. This is called a monk who is practicing for the utterly complete destruction of suffering, for the cessation of volition. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha is saying that when a monk he considers thoroughly, then he begins to understand that there are these 12 links of dependent origination that gives rise to suffering, and the ultimate condition is ignorance. From ignorance you have volition, and then from volition you have consciousness, etc. So he, understanding this, he practices to destroy all these 12 links. In that way he can destroy suffering. Monks, if a person immersed in ignorance generates a meritorious volition, consciousness fares on to the meritorious. If he generates a demeritorious volition, consciousness fares on to the demeritorious. If he generates an imperturbable volition, consciousness fares on to the imperturbable. I'll stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha is saying, if a person out of ignorance, he generates meritorious volition, that means he generates good karma. If he generates good karma, the consciousness will bring him to a good rebirth. And then if he generates bad karma, evil karma, then the consciousness will bring him to this evil, woeful plane of rebirth. But if he generates an imperturbable volition, probably meaning a high state of jhana, which is imperturbable, unshakable, like the 4th jhana onwards is considered an imperturbable state. So he will be born in that realm, it's called the imperturbable realm. That means the high jhana heavens there. And then the Buddha says, but when a monk has abandoned ignorance and aroused true knowledge, then with the fading away of ignorance and the rising of true knowledge, he does not generate a meritorious volition, or a demeritorious volition, or an imperturbable volition. Since he does not generate or fashion volition, he does not cling to anything in the world. Not clinging, he is not agitated. Not being agitated, he personally attains Nibbana. He understands, destroyed is birth. The holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more for this state of being. Stop here for a moment. The Buddha says, if a person is practicing to be liberated, then he does not generate meritorious volition or demeritorious volition or imperturbable volition. Then he does not cling to anything in the world, he does not want anything in the world, then only he attains Nibbana. If he feels a pleasant feeling, he understands it is impermanent. He understands it is not held on to, that means not clung to. He understands it is not delighted in. If he feels a painful feeling, he understands it is impermanent. He understands it is not held on to. He understands it is not delighted in. If he feels neither painful nor pleasant feeling, he understands it is impermanent. He understands it is not held to. He understands it is not delighted in. If he feels a pleasant feeling, he feels it as detached. If he feels a painful feeling, he feels it detached. If he feels neither painful nor pleasant feeling, he feels it detached. Stop here a moment. So here the Buddha is saying that this monk, whatever feeling he experiences, he is detached from it. When he feels a feeling terminating with the body, he understands, I feel a feeling terminating with the body. When he feels a feeling terminating with life, he understands, I feel a feeling terminating with life. He understands, with the breakup of the body, following the exhaustion of life, all that is felt, not being delighted in, will become cooled right here. Mere bodily remains will be left. Suppose, monks, a man would remove a hot clay pot from a potter's kiln and set it on smooth ground. Its heat would be dissipated right there, and potsherds would be left. So too, when he feels a feeling terminating with the body, terminating with life, he understands, with the breakup of the body, following the exhaustion of life, all that is felt not being delighted in will become cool right here. Mere bodily remains will be left. Let's stop here for a moment. So here, this monk who has finished his work, when he knows that the end of life is coming, then he understands that following the death of the body, all the experiences of life will become cool. Only the body will remain. When we have not become liberated, we are passionate about life. There are so many things we are concerned about in life. But then, a lot of people, when they are dying, they think of many unimportant things, and they think it's very important. They haven't done this. They worry about their son who is not married. They worry about this. They worry about their property. Worry about their young wife, and all these things that are not important at all. Because when the body dies, the life that we have led will become like a dream that has gone by. Every life we experience is one dream after another, one dream after another. And when it is finished, anything connected with that life actually is not important at all. It's just a dream gone by, not important at all. Just like when we dream at night, when we have a nightmare, in the nightmare itself, we are so frightened, we are so excited, and we strive with all our energy to either to fight off the evil or to escape from being killed and all that. And then when we wake up, then we think about it. Just now I was so excited, just now I was so worried. Actually, it's nothing to worry about, right? So in the same way, life, when we are alive, we think that everything in life is so important. But when we die, all the things are not important. What is important is where we are going for rebirth. That is important. If we realize this earlier, we would have started our preparations for the next phase of our life. Our people, they don't realize that to prepare for your rebirth takes many years. Many years. You can't like last minute. They're going to die in a few days' time. You think what to do. Too late already. Need at least 10 years to prepare to get a reasonable, good rebirth. It's a thing to remember when we are dying. All that has happened in life will grow cold, not important at all. What do you think, monks? Can a monk whose asavas are destroyed create a meritorious volition or a demeritorious volition or an imperturbable volition? No, Venerable Sir. When there are utterly no volitions, with the cessation of volitions, would consciousness be discerned, be seen? No, Venerable Sir. When there is utterly no consciousness, with the cessation of consciousness, would mentality, materiality be discerned, be seen? No, Venerable Sir. When there is utterly no mentality, materiality, then there is no sixth sense basis, no contact, no feeling, no craving, no clinging, no being, no birth. And with the cessation of birth, there will be no aging and death. So the Buddha said, good monks, it is exactly so and not otherwise. Place faith in me about this, monks. Resolve on this. Be free from perplexity and doubt about this. Just this is the end of suffering. So the Buddha said, have faith in him. What he says is true. He is not lying to us. So in this sutta, the Buddha says, if we want to understand how to end suffering, we have to consider, contemplate these links one by one. That actually suffering comes about because we are in this world. But if we are not born into this world, then there is no suffering. And how not to be born in this world is to the source of birth, is to stop the source of birth, which is being. And then to understand that being comes from clinging or attachment, attachment comes from craving, etc. Then that is understanding how suffering originates and how suffering can end. Then if you are walking the path to be liberated, then you don't want to generate any volition, because you don't want to be attached to anything in the world, so you don't want anything at all. 12.52 at Savatthi. Monks, when one dwells contemplating gratification in things that can be clung to, craving increases. Let's stop here for a moment. Here the Buddha says, if you dwell contemplating gratification, that means satisfaction, satisfaction with things that you cling to, then craving increases. For example, if you have a big house, you have a big car, have a lot of property and wealth, then when you contemplate all your wealth, then you are very satisfied. But your craving will increase. With craving as condition, clinging comes to be. With clinging as condition, being. With being as condition, birth. With birth as condition, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair come to be. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. Suppose, monks, a great bonfire was burning, consuming 10, 20, 30 or 40 loads of wood, and a man would cast dry grass, dry cow dung and dry wood into it from time to time. Thus sustained by that material, fueled by it, that great bonfire would burn for a very long time. So too, when one lives contemplating gratification in things that can be clung to, craving increases. And from craving, you have all the other things, clinging, etc. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. So here the Buddha is saying, just like a big fire, if you keep throwing three things into it, dry grass, dry cow dung and dry wood, the fire will continue to burn. It will not stop. So in the same way, our fire is fueled by three things. Just like these three things. The three things within us is the greed, hatred and delusion. So this greed, hatred and delusion will keep the fire burning, the fire of this round of rebirths. So samsara. That's because we are satisfied with life, and our craving, instead of decreasing, our craving increases. Anything in the world that we enjoy, then our craving will increase, and then our clinging also will increase. And then the Buddha said, monks, when one dwells contemplating danger in things that can be clung to, craving ceases. With the cessation of craving comes cessation of clinging. The cessation of clinging, cessation of being, cessation of birth, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair cease. Such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. Suppose, monks, a great bonfire was burning, consuming 10, 20, 30 or 40 loads of wood, and a man would not cast dry grass, dry cow dung or dry wood into it from time to time. Thus, when the former supply of fuel is exhausted, that great bonfire, not being fed with any more fuel, lacking sustenance, would be extinguished. So too, when one lives contemplating danger in things that can be clung to, craving ceases, and when craving ceases, clinging ceases, etc. Such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. That's the end of the sutta. So here, the second part is that when a person realizes danger in the things that he clings to, then craving ceases. And what is that danger? The danger is that it is impermanent, and because it is impermanent, it will give you suffering. I remember last year I was talking to one one of our Buddhist supporters, devotees in Kuala Lumpur. He had a son who went overseas to study, and I think he went swimming and he drowned and died. And because this man only had one son, I think one daughter, one son and two daughters or something like that. So when the son died, he and his wife felt so much pain, so much suffering. And then he told me something which struck me. He told me after that experience, he dare not love the daughter so much. The more you love, when it goes away, the pain is unbearable. So because of that, he said, dare not love the daughter so much now. It shows he's a smart fellow. Not many people will realize this. So here the Buddha is saying that when one contemplates the danger of that clinging, that craving, that means that suffering will follow. Then he let's go of that craving. So actually, you see, the best teacher in the world is suffering. If we don't suffer, we don't realize. So we have to suffer. It's just like a small kid. He tell you not to play with fire, he won't listen to you, right? He will continue to play until he gets his fingers burned. Then you don't have to tell him, he will automatically stop playing with fire. So the world is like that. When we are young, we want to experience all the pleasures in life. We want to be a macho, we want to be a great hero, go into this and go into that. And then when we suffer, then we realize. But there are some people, their karma is good enough, they can get out of it. But there are some people, their karma is not so good. When they suffer, they don't get out of it. When I was young, I had a neighbor, young guy, young man. So he joined a bad company, ended up becoming a drug addict. Once you become a drug addict, it's almost impossible to get out of it. So I think he could be like one of those just die on the barefoot path on the roadside. So it's very pitiful. So if we get caught by this state, then you can't get out of it. 12.60. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling among the Kurus, where there was a town of the Kurus named Kammasadhamma. Then the Venerable Ananda approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down to one side and said to him, "It is wonderful, Venerable Sir, it is amazing, Venerable Sir. This dependent origination is so deep and so deep in implications. Yet to me it seems as clear can be." Stop here for a moment. So Venerable Ananda is disclosing to the Buddha that actually dependent origination is very deep, but to him it seems so clear that he understands it so clearly. Then the Buddha said, "Not so, Ananda, not so, Ananda. This dependent origination is deep and deep in implications. It is because of not understanding and not penetrating this Dhamma, Ananda, that this generation has become like a tangled skein, like a knotted ball of thread, like matted reeds and rushes, and does not pass beyond the plane of misery, the bad destinations, the netherworld, samsara." Here the Buddha is saying this generation, people have become like a tangled skein, is a loosely called bundle of yarn or thread, all tangled up. The thread is all tangled up and knotted. So why is it that Ananda is supposed to be a Sotapanna? And he says he can see a dependent origination clearly, but the Buddha says no. Actually, we find in the Vinaya books, after the Buddha was enlightened, then even after enlightenment, he wanted to understand dependent origination. And it is stated that he spent the whole night from 6 p.m. until 6 a.m. For 12 hours, he was contemplating dependent origination, how suffering arises, how suffering ceases, and how suffering arises and ceases. 12 hours. Then only he fully understood. So you see, even Sammasambuddha, to understand, it's not that the Sammasambuddha knows everything, but a Sammasambuddha or an Arahant, he can know if he takes the trouble to contemplate. So he has got to take the trouble to contemplate. So like the Buddha, his understanding of the dependent origination is much deeper than, remember, Ananda, for the simple reason that the Buddha used his psychic power to see how beings die and pass away, how dependent origination works through many lifetimes. So because he could see it clearly, contemplating the past, contemplating the present, contemplating the future, and he understood thoroughly. But it took him 12 hours. Whereas Ananda, who would only understand superficially what is around, he could see. Remember Ananda, but Ananda did not have the psychic power to see the past, the present, and the future. So he couldn't have understood so deeply. And then the Buddha said, Ananda, when one dwells contemplating gratification in things that can be clung to, craving increases. With craving as condition, clinging comes to be. With clinging as condition, etc., etc. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. Suppose, Ananda, there was a great tree, and all its roots going downwards and across would send the sap upwards. Sustained by that sap, nourished by it, that great tree would stand for a very long time. So too, when one lives contemplating gratification in things that can be clung to, craving increases. And when craving increases, then craving, with craving as condition, clinging comes to be, etc. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. So here the Buddha is saying, just like a big tree, its roots will take in all the nutriments and send it up to the tree so that it will survive for a very long time. So in the same way, we are fed, we continue to survive in this round of rebirths because of our nutriment of greed, hatred and delusion. As long as we have greed, hatred and delusion, this will sustain us in the round of rebirths. When Ananda, one dwells contemplating danger in things that can be clung to, craving ceases. With the cessation of craving comes cessation of clinging, etc. Such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. Suppose, Ananda, there was a great tree. Then a man would come along bringing a shovel and a basket. He would cut down the tree at its foot. He would winnow the ashes in a strong wind, or let them be carried away by the swift current of a river. Thus, the great tree would be cut off at the root, made like a palm stump, obliterated so that it is no more subject to future arising. So too, Ananda, when one dwells contemplating danger in things that can be clung to, craving ceases. With the cessation of craving comes cessation of clinging. With the cessation of clinging, cessation of being, and then cessation of birth, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair. Such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. That's the end of the sutta. So in the same way, the Buddha says, if we understand these 12 links, then we have cut off this ignorance. And when we have cut off this ignorance, then the whole chain slowly will break up from ignorance. And this volition ceases, and then consciousness ceases, etc. That's the way to end. So for us to do that, we got to cut ignorance. We have to understand the Dhamma, and then we practice to cut off greed, hatred, and delusion. So I'll stop here for tonight. This sutta that I just read is often quoted, where Ananda says, dependent origination to him is so clear, but the Buddha says, not so. That means you don't really understand. It is not stated clearly, this Sotapanna, how he enters Nibbana, but either he can come back to the human realm and practice and enter Nibbana, or from one of the higher heavens. But since the state of Nibbana is a very high state, so the mind must eventually probably cultivate his mind to such a peaceful state that is near to the fourth jhana, so that then only when he dies, the mind will become so cool. There are some people, for example, anagamins, they don't attain arahanthood, Anagamins, they have attained the third fruit, so they are born either in the fourth jhana plane, Suddhavasa heavens, or it is mentioned in a sutta that if they have cultivated arupa jhana, then they are born into that formless realm, the formless jhana heavens, which is higher. So from there, when they die, they don't attain arahanthood, but when at the moment of dying, because their mind is already used to entering the high state of jhana, so when they die, the mind will just enter nibbana. Once returner is called a once returner because he has got to come back to the human birth one more time. So if a person comes back as a once returner, Sakadagamin, he will probably be like our Siddhartha Gautama. He will go forth on his own and practice until he attains the jhanas. Then the memory will come back. So the Dhamma knowledge will come back, and then from there he will attain arahanthood. Yeah, different types of Sotapanna. Some take 7 lifetimes, some take less. Non-returner is anagamins. They must have attained the fourth jhana already.
And also, this one talking about understanding the method.
Understanding dependent origination.
What is the difference between this household and those arahant understanding?
Oh, the depth is different. Just like Ananda, he says he has seen dependent origination very clearly, but the Buddha said not so, not so.
So what is understanding? What the UK is just that you know it as a formula, this is that, but you do not comprehend it.
Knowing as a formula is not really understanding. Not really understanding. You have to see one by one how it is true. That's why the Buddha said you have to contemplate thoroughly. When you contemplate thoroughly, that's why this is vipassana. Vipassana is contemplation. But then it also depends on the state of your mind. If your mind has attained to one-pointedness of mind, then when you contemplate, you will understand at a deeper level. Whereas a person who has not attained to one-pointedness of mind, he will understand at a shallower level.
What you mean by contemplating is logical reasoning or something else when you contemplate?
When you contemplate, like on the Dhamma, you can think about it, reflect on it, think about it. But how much you penetrate, it depends on the state of your mind. Just like, for example, you ask a few people to contemplate, say, like a solution to an economic problem. Simple thing, solution to an economic problem. Different people will come up with different answers depending on their wisdom or their intelligence. So in the same way, when different people contemplate the Dhamma, their understanding depends on the depth of their mind, how much wisdom they have. You were saying that the Buddha said if you experience a pleasant feeling, you should not take delight in it. If you experience a painful feeling also, you don't take delight in it. So we're not supposed to take delight in jhana. Meditative bliss. There is a sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya. It says that when we have a pleasant feeling that comes from the normal worldly enjoyment, that means from seeing, hearing, smelling, taste and touch, there is a tendency to crave for it, to cling to it, but not with jhana. With jhana, although a person when he experiences jhana, it is very blissful, but actually there's a misinterpretation from the commentaries. A lot of Vipassana monks, they say that you can be attached to jhana and all these things. And the comments about jhana, piti and sukha are out now because they follow the commentary. For example, they say piti can be very strong and all that, overpowering and all that. But if you look into the suttas, the Buddha says this piti and sukha is a subtle feeling. It's a subtle feeling. It's not a strong feeling. What is strong is the mind. The mind is so strong that no feeling can overpower the mind. The mind in the state of jhana is extremely strong. And these piti and sukha, these bliss states, are subtle feelings only. And there is no tendency to crave for it. In the sutta is mentioned, in the states of meditative absorption, there is no tendency to crave for the meditative bliss. Wrong opinions, wrong concepts, wrong views have been given by Vipassana monks to discourage people from enjoying the bliss of meditative absorption. Whereas in the suttas, the Buddha says, if people ask, do the sons of the Sakya indulge in meditative bliss? The Buddha says yes. And then Buddha says he encourages his monks to indulge in the happiness of meditative absorption because he says there are 4 advantages. You constantly dwell in the jhanas. You can attain the Sotapanna, Sakadagamin, Anagamin and Arahant Buddha. So it is blameless pleasure.
May I ask if there is a particular reason why Vipassana teachers discourage people of new jhana? Is there any particular reason?
Wrong view. They don't understand jhana. There's a famous Vipassana teacher says jhana is useless. He says, when you are in jhana, you don't know. It's like you are in a state of trance. You don't have mindfulness, he says. Then when you come out of it only, and then you realize, oh, I was in jhana. There's a complete misinterpretation of jhana. When a person enters jhana, the mind is very mindful, very alert. And that is also stated by the Buddha in the description of the 3rd jhana and the 4th jhana. In fact, the Buddha says in the state of the 4th jhana, the sati is perfect sati in the 4th jhana. But this ignorant Vipassana teacher says that in jhana you have no sati. In fact, in the sutta, the Buddha said that there are few reasons why the true Dharma will disappear. One of them is disrespect for the Buddha, disrespect for Dhamma, that means the suttas, disrespect for the Sangha, disrespect for the training, and disrespect for Samadhi, belittling concentration, belittling Samadhi. Whereas the Buddha always praised Samadhi, certain monks, because of their ignorance, they belittle Samadhi. And this will lead to the disappearance of the true Dhamma. In fact, the Buddha says that the jhanas are the footprints of the Tathagata. If you want to follow the path that the Buddha walked, you have to go on the way of jhana. Otherwise, you are not walking the path of the Buddha.
So I want to know how to practice. I want to reflect But if let's say we clear what you say, clear, we don't detect to the love, we release from suffering. If how about the family, the children, how do you like to?
This, you cannot force yourself to let go. It comes from understanding. It comes from maturing of your mind. And you can help your mind to mature by studying more suttas, listening to suttas like this, and practicing meditation. So you come more often and practice, and then slowly, this. But anyway, usually I say if somebody wants to abandon the family, I have to make sure the family is financially sound. If the family is financially sound, it doesn't matter if your son is 1 year old, you can still go off like the Buddha. The Buddha, the son was just born. He never worried that, he has to do his father's duty to bring up the child. No. Because he's got this young kid has got the grandparents to look after him, has got the mother to look after him, got a lot of wealth to look after him. Then the Buddha just walked off.
Just to touch on consciousness, still is in the sense of chitta consciousness. Also, the Bible there's a story about this lady whose chitta entered and answers with and soon after she was pregnant. So, second question is,
there is no clear-cut distinction. The mind, there are 3 Pali terms for the mind, and they are chitta, mano, and vijnana. Mano is quite clearly defined by the Buddha. Vijnana is very clearly defined by the Buddha to be 6 types of vijnana. The seeing vijnana, seeing consciousness. Vijnana is consciousness. So you have seeing consciousness, hearing consciousness, smelling consciousness, taste consciousness, touch consciousness, and thinking consciousness. Okay? So this vijnana is very clear. Mano is the thinking faculty. Mano is actually one of the 6 sense organs. Just like the eye is an organ. So mano is the thinking faculty. So that is mano. That also is quite clear. Not only thinking like creating karma also intending is also due to mano. But chitta is not very clearly defined. Chitta is generally the mind as a whole. But you must remember these terms are not clear-cut, because when you talk about mind, like in the 5 aggregates, the Buddha says, we take ourselves to be the 5 aggregates. We take ourselves to be this body and this mind. And in these 5 aggregates, you have body, feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness. The last 4 is supposed to be mind. Feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness. This is supposed to be mind. Now, you look at feeling. Feeling is part of the mind. So, just now we said 3 terms define the mind. Chitta, mano, and vijnana. How about feeling? Feeling is also part of the mind. You cannot say feeling is not the mind. You cannot say perception is not the mind. You cannot say volition is not the mind. So all these terms are related. So it's very difficult to pull one out and say this is that. They are all related. Without consciousness, can you have feeling? You cannot. Without consciousness, can you have perception? No. So feeling, perception, it comes together with consciousness. Otherwise, there's no feeling, there's no perception, there's no volition. So they're all interrelated. It's just that this mind, because we use it in different ways. When you use it for seeing, the Buddha says that is consciousness, vijnana. When you use it for thinking, the Buddha says that is mano, the thinking faculty. So when the consciousness descends in the womb, the Buddha calls it the citta. So they are all related. You cannot simply say this is this, this is that. No, they are all related. So no point to split hairs. Sometimes certain things we want to be too defined too clearly. It's not possible.
If a person is not able to break the chitta in the face of that pain, then does that mean that the rebirth is already certain, that the person will be charged or covered?
You see, firstly, the rebirth of a being, that person generally has no control. You cannot say, oh, I want to choose to be this, to be that. Generally, because when we are dying, you may think you want to be reborn here, you will be reborn there. After some time, your six senses start to close. You won't be able to see, you won't be able to smell. After some time, people touch you also, you don't know. You won't be able to hear. And then, as you go deeper and deeper into that death state, after some time, you are no more breathing. Okay, your breathing has stopped, and your heart also has stopped. Then the doctor will come and examine and say, oh, this person is dead. When the doctor says this person is dead, he means this person is clinically dead. But in the Buddha's teaching, that person may not be dead. Because the Buddha says, when a person actually dies, three things must stop. The vitality, maybe in Chinese we call the qi. The qi has stopped. Okay. Secondly, the consciousness stops. Thirdly, the body heat stops. So, even when the doctor says somebody has died, his mind may still be working. Usually, the mind will still continue to work. And when you touch the body, it's still not yet cold. So, for example, one Penang devotee told me a few years ago, the mother died of cancer. So, at the last moment when the mother died of cancer, she was in pain. So, when she died, you could see the face, very painful expression on her face. But 1 hour later, the daughter told me the face changed, after she died. After clinical death, face changed and became very bright and happy and smiling and all that. That means during that 1 hour after the doctor pronounced her dead, the mind was still going, still doing that 1 hour. And those last thoughts, we have no control over our last thoughts. Those last thoughts are conditioned by our karma. If your karma is good, you always think of helping people, always think of meditating, keeping sila and all that. Those last thoughts will be because your behavior is like a deva or devi. So your last thoughts or deva or devi thoughts will bring you to a heavenly rebirth. So when you have those thoughts, and you may see devas or devis coming to welcome you. So you're happy, happy. So the face is smiling, happy. So on the other hand, a person with an evil heart, always thinking of harming others, when he's dying, those last thoughts, he's fighting with people, chased by other beings and all that. Then he sees himself being reborn in a ghost realm. Always chased by the hell, in the hell realm. So always chased by hell beings. So we don't have much control where we are going to be born. So no need to think so much. Important is to do our work now. Cultivate the mind so that our everyday thoughts are very important. Our natural frequency. If you want to be reborn, for example, in heaven, right now your character has got to be like a deva or devi. So that is your natural frequency. So if you are behaving like a deva or devi, then you will go to that realm. But if your mind is muddled up, restless, full of greed and all that, it's very natural. Either you are born in the ghost realm or in the animal realm, because that's your mind is like a ghost or like a animal. So that's why it's important to cultivate our mind. And to cultivate our mind, we need the theory from the Buddha's words, and the practice is our meditation. And not only that, you have to keep your sila, watch your mind every day, and control your mind. If you cannot control your mind, and the mind controls you, the Buddha said, you are full of suffering. An undisciplined mind, in the suttas, the Buddha said, an undisciplined mind is a source of great suffering. A disciplined mind is a source of great happiness. You look at the monks who attain the jhanas, because they have totally disciplined their mind until the mind becomes one-pointed, unmoving. Most of us, we have the monkey mind, but the person who can enter jhana, the mind becomes so disciplined, totally immovable. But in that state, great bliss arises, so that when that being is born into the jhana heavens, first jhana or second or third jhana or fourth jhana, that being emits light, brighter than the sun, according to the even the lowest jhana. The first jhana, the Brahma, Devas, their light goes out to the minimum of 1,000 world systems. That means it's much brighter than the sun. Goes up to 1,000, and some of them goes up to 100,000 worlds. The light can reach 100,000 world systems. And those who attain the second jhana, the sutta say, every day they are exclaiming sukha, sukha, sukha. For millions and millions of years, they are saying sukha. Much better than our ecstasy pill. Ecstasy pill, only maybe half an hour, 1 hour. What is 1 hour, half? After 1 hour, when you get out of the ecstasy bliss, you experience dukkha. The opposite will come. But this one, millions and millions and millions of sukha. And then the third jhana, the Buddha says, that being is so happy, chutta sang, cannot say anything. So you can consider becoming a monk. Actually, according to statistics, monks and nuns live longer than other people. Okay, stop here for tonight.